English version, optimized for natural AI voice, March 15th, 2023. A gray afternoon in the heart of Chicago. The final winter winds still slipped through the towering glass windows on the 24th floor of a fintech startup. Emily Tran, 32 years old, sat upright in her black leather chair, fingers interlaced beneath the desk, trying to stay composed. She had worked here for 3 years as a senior marketing manager, a dream role she'd spent nearly a decade chasing. Her $95,000 salary was enough to support her 6-year-old daughter, Mia, and cover the monthly mortgage. Life wasn't luxurious, but it was stable. Then came the voice of the CEO, calm but unmistakable. Due to budget constraints and restructuring, we're letting you go. Everything blurred. Emily sat frozen. Outside, the wind beat against the windows like it was tearing through the very foundation she'd built. 15 minutes later, she walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box, a severance letter marked 3 months' salary, and a dream, just shattered. On the way home, her phone rang. It was the babysitter. "When are you picking up Mia?" Emily swallowed hard. "I'm on my way." That night, she sat alone in the kitchen, warm yellow light spilling across the hardwood floor. The faint scent of chamomile tea lingered, but her thoughts were anything but calm. How do I tell my daughter that Mommy doesn't have a job anymore? When Mia asked, "Mommy, are you going to work tomorrow?" Emily smiled softly and said, "Today was a surprise day off." But inside, she was screaming, "How do I survive on this severance? I still owe $85,000. Then, the screen fades to black, and suddenly, light. 18 months later. Emily stands on the stage at TEDx Chicago, spotlight catching the red dress she's wearing. She smiles, confident and calm. Behind her, bold letters read, "From layoff to leadership, building a $500,000 business." She opens with a sentence that silences the entire room. "Getting laid off was the worst day of my life, but also the best thing that ever happened to me." The journey from jobless to six-figure entrepreneur began with sleepless nights, silent tears, and one decision: beg others for a chance or create her own. And that one choice changed Emily's life forever. The next morning, her first day without work, Emily's small apartment felt strangely quiet. The alarm still rang at 6 a.m., but she didn't need to get up. Mia ran into the room, hugged her tightly, and asked cheerfully, "Mommy, you're not going to work today? You're staying home to play with me?" Emily forced a smile. "Yeah, sweetie, Mommy's taking a surprise day off." But in her mind, numbers were racing like broken code. $6,800 in monthly expenses, $8,000 in severance left, $85,000 in credit card and student loan debt. She had exactly 5 weeks before the bottom fell out. In the first week, Emily tried to stay positive. She applied to 25 jobs every morning, scheduled coffee chats with former colleagues, updated her LinkedIn. She told herself, "I'm good. I have an MBA. I helped a startup double their revenue. Someone out there needs me." But then came week 2. And week 3. The rejection emails started sounding eerily similar. "You're impressive, but we're going in a different direction. We loved your energy, but the role is on hold due to budget. Overqualified, too senior. We decided to promote internally." The more rejections came, the more invisible Emily felt. She stopped calling friends, stopped replying to messages. Facebook and LinkedIn deleted from her phone. She couldn't bear seeing others move forward while she was sinking deeper into quicksand. On the night of May 12th, Mia drew a picture. It showed the two of them smiling, with a giant sun in a bright blue sky. She handed it to Emily and asked, "Mommy, why don't you smile like before anymore?" Emily didn't know how to answer. She just held her daughter close and said nothing. Then, the breaking point. May 15th. Emily received an email from her 23rd interview. This one had felt different. Dream agency, perfect fit, right culture. She'd made it to the final round. But the email simply read, "We've decided to go with an internal candidate." 2 a.m. The kitchen was silent, except for the ticking of the wall clock. Emily sat on the floor, staring at her open laptop, an Excel budget sheet glowing back at her. She typed the numbers again and again. 5 weeks of survival left. She whispered, "I've spent 2 months begging someone to hire me. And for what?" She looked up at the ceiling, tears falling quietly. What if I just hired myself? That was the moment. Emily placed her hands on the table, opened her laptop again, but this time not to apply for a job. This time, to build something entirely new. She didn't know where the road would lead, but for the first time in months, there was a flicker of light. Not from someone else, but from within herself. At 2 a.m., under the dim kitchen light, with a cup of tea gone cold and a spreadsheet full of red numbers, it wasn't just a moment of despair. It was a moment of awakening. For Emily Tran, that was the moment she stopped looking for someone to hire her and started asking, what if I hired myself? 3 days later, before the sun came up, Emily began writing the first ideas for a new business model, offering fractional CMO services to small businesses. Companies that couldn't afford a full-time marketing executive, but desperately needed a real strategy to grow. She started simple: a laptop, an email template, a list of 50 old contacts on LinkedIn, no logo, no website, just one honest message. I just started a small marketing consulting service for small businesses. If you know anyone who could use this, would you mind passing my name along? Week 1, she got 3 replies. Week 2, 12. One of them was Jason, CEO of a $3 million SaaS company, and an old colleague. They jumped on a Zoom call. No fancy background, no polished pitch, just 2 former coworkers talking about a real business problem. Jason asked, "How do I know you can really do this when you just left the corporate world?" Emily answered, "I once took a campaign from 30 to 180 leads per month at my last company. But more importantly, I'm betting my entire career on this. I have more motivation than anyone you've ever hired." And just like that, her first contract, worth $48,000, was signed. It wasn't luck. It was readiness, the right timing, the right person, the right pain point. From that moment on, Emily realized she wasn't just building a business. She was rebuilding herself. The whiteboard in her kitchen was no longer a place for failed budgets. It became a roadmap. Bullet points of potential clients, market segments, pricing tiers, and delivery models. On the wall, she wrote reminders in bold marker: deliver real value. Strategy, not just service. You don't need many clients, just the right ones. In the next 3 months, she signed 3 more clients. Revenue reached nearly $90,000. But more than anything, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years: control. And just then, another lesson emerged. Growth is good, but uncontrolled growth can kill a fragile dream. Those first contracts brought Emily the kind of thrill you feel from the first breeze of summer. But as autumn quietly settled in, reality crept back, like dark clouds gathering after a peaceful afternoon. She realized she was working 14 hours a day, from early morning while Mia was still asleep until late into the night. Dinner was a rushed sandwich at her desk, the sound of keys clicking mixed with her daughter's little voice. "Mommy, are you done yet?" One evening in mid-September, Emily sat staring at a packed calendar and a bank account freshly credited by 3 new clients. But instead of joy, she felt fear. Getting clients wasn't the problem anymore. The real question was, how do I serve them all without burning myself out? That Sunday night, she opened her notebook and wrote one sentence in bold: revenue isn't success if I'm too exhausted to enjoy it. That was when the real challenge began. She learned to standardize her services, building what she called the Elevate plan: audit, strategy, execution, optimize. No more fully custom work. Instead, a repeatable framework, one that could be taught, scaled, and paused when she needed a break. Next came the hardest decision she'd made so far: hiring. First was Sarah, a content specialist laid off from a big agency. Emily didn't just choose her for the skills. She saw herself in Sarah's tired but determined eyes. Then came Marcus, a marketing automation expert working on an hourly basis. They weren't expenses, they were leverage. Most importantly, Emily reset her boundaries. No work after 6 p.m., no weekend meetings, and 1 full day off each month, just for Mia. And something strange happened. The quality of service improved, clients became happier, and revenue kept growing. Because when a founder stops spinning in circles, handling every tiny task, they finally have the time to think bigger and deeper. In her journal, Emily wrote, "I used to think freedom meant having enough money. Now I know. Freedom is the ability to choose how I live each day." The challenges weren't over, but for the first time in years, she wasn't running from anything. She was building, intentionally, one choice at a time, one disciplined habit, one well-timed no. Part 5. A turning point in the rain. It was a gray October afternoon in Chicago, and the rain had been falling since morning. The soft tapping on the office roof made everything feel heavier. Emily sat motionless in front of her laptop, eyes fixed on the numbers. Bank balance, 2,180. Tomorrow was payroll. Sarah and Marcus were counting on her. One more delayed client payment, and everything would fall apart. Emily had hit rock bottom before, but nothing hurt quite like this. Not because the money was running out, but because, for the first time, she understood the weight of true leadership. You don't get to fall apart when people are leaning on you. Sarah walked in, soaked from the rain, carrying a half-printed deck in her arms. The printer had jammed again. She smiled anyway, still believing everything would be fine. Marcus, quiet as always, had been in the corner since early morning, fingers flying across the keyboard, fixing a broken automation for their biggest client. He didn't ask about payroll. He only asked, "Did you get any sleep?" That night, Emily got home late. Mia had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching an old comic book they'd borrowed from the public library. The apartment was still, faintly sweet with the scent of vanilla cookies. Sarah had left them behind after work. Emily sat beside her daughter. Looking at that small, peaceful face, she whispered, "I won't let you grow up worried. No matter how tired I get, I'll find a way." And that way didn't come from Emily alone. It came from them, the ones who still believed in her, even when she wasn't sure she believed in herself. The next morning, Marcus proposed a cash flow optimization plan. Sarah mapped out a lean service model she called the 30-day marketing sprint. Within 48 hours, they pitched it to 9 small businesses. One signed a $4,500 contract that same afternoon. 2 more asked to schedule discovery calls that week. No one complained about extra hours. No one asked, "Is the company okay?" Because Sarah and Marcus had made a choice. They stayed, not for a paycheck, but for a vision bigger than themselves. That weekend, Emily wrote in her journal, "I thought I was building a company, but it turns out I was building a home. And the people in this home, they don't need me to be perfect. They just need me not to give up." In that cold beginning of winter air, Emily finally understood something. She wasn't alone anymore, and that changed everything. But to grow further, she'd have to do what she had always feared. Let go, share the dream, step back, so others could step forward. We'll see what that looked like in the next part. Part 6, the first fire you hand to someone else. It was late December. The snow outside their co-working office piled high like walls of silence. Inside, Emily watched as Marcus led a client onboarding call, her first time not taking the lead. Sarah was across the room, presenting campaign concepts on a whiteboard covered in colorful scribbles. It was supposed to be just a Friday check-in. Instead, it looked like they were the ones running the show now. Emily stood quietly by the coffee machine, hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. Cinnamon from someone's oatmeal lingered in the air, mixing with the sharp scent of dry erase markers. She should have felt relieved. The team was stepping up. The business was growing. But all she felt was fear. What if she let go too soon? What if the spark faded without her hand holding the flame? She remembered something her father once told her, back when she was still a teenager, working part-time at his small corner store in San Jose. The hardest part about building anything isn't the beginning, Em. It's knowing when to stop building alone. That night, Emily sat at her desk long after the team had gone home. She scrolled through old project folders, emails from the early days, voice notes she left herself when she had no one else to talk to. Each file was like a fingerprint from a version of her who had built this from nothing. From $2,000 left in the bank to 6 figures of recurring revenue. From being laid off to laying a foundation. Then she opened a new doc. Just one title, Things I No Longer Have to Control. She wrote, first client call, campaign calendar reviews, email performance dashboards, late night ad troubleshooting, pitch deck design. And then almost shaking, all the fear that I'm only valuable if I do everything myself. By January, the Elevate Her Growth Framework wasn't just an idea. It was a living, breathing process, documented, tested, shared. Marcus fine-tuned the automation flows so anyone could step in. Sarah created a training manual for new hires with voice memos and screen recordings. Emily's job shifted from maker to mentor, from hero to builder of heroes. And then something happened that changed her forever. One evening, She got home early, truly early, for the first time in months. Mia was in the living room, balancing a Lego tower on a purple dragon. When she saw her mom, her face lit up. "You're home. You said Fridays were your long days," Emily replied. "Not anymore, kiddo. Mommy's team can handle it now." Mia looked at her with a kind of innocent wisdom only children have and said, "Wow, that means you're a boss who trusts." Emily almost cried, because in that moment, she realized success isn't when you do everything. It's when others rise because you did it first and then handed them the flame. From that week on, every Friday became CEO half day. Not for errands or email, but for thinking, dreaming, resting. For becoming the version of herself that Mia, Sarah, Marcus, and even that scared woman from March 2023 could be proud of. And in the quiet of those Friday afternoons, Emily no longer feared the silence. Because in that silence, her legacy was speaking. Next, we'll see how that legacy expanded into a full-grown company and a life far beyond her wildest plans. January 2024. Emily Tran sat alone in her favorite little cafe, flipping open a worn leather notebook. On the first page, she wrote in purple ink, "This year, I will cross the $1 million mark." Not out of greed, but because of a promise to herself and to her daughter, Mia. After a whirlwind first year filled with challenges and surprises, Elevate Her Marketing had hit $500,000 in revenue. But Emily knew, to enter a new phase of real growth, she had to evolve. From someone who does everything to someone who builds systems so others can shine. In Q1, she began by restructuring her team. She promoted Sarah to head of content, hired 2 young writers, and brought Marcus, her automation expert, on as a full-time tech advisor. These weren't easy decisions. Letting go of control meant no more writing every email, no more tweaking every presentation slide. Instead, Emily poured her energy into strategy, building relationships with high-level clients, and most importantly, developing herself as a leader. In Q2, she landed her biggest contract yet, $20,000 per month with a fintech company. In their first meeting, the CEO said, "I chose you not just for your skill, but because you're a single mom who built $500,000 in 1 year. That tells me you don't quit." But growth is never a straight line. In July, a major client pulled out, while $12,000 in monthly revenue vanished with 1 email. Emily lost sleep for 3 nights. Mia whispered, "Mommy, you forgot your promise to take me to the park again." That moment hit like a wake-up call. Emily reset her boundaries. No emails after 7 p.m., no weekend meetings, and every quarter, 1 quiet week to go somewhere with Mia. No phone, no laptop. Their first trip, Lake Michigan. They laughed, splashed, and drew dreams in the sand. By Q3's end, Emily launched her new service, the 90-Day Growth Sprint, a results-guaranteed marketing program. Within 10 weeks, she closed 8 contracts, adding $200,000 in revenue. For the first time, she didn't just feel like her business was surviving, it was soaring. In December, the final numbers came in. Total revenue, $705,000. Active clients, 12. Profit, $200,000. Weekly work hours, 45, with Mia. More than ever before. On Christmas night, Emily walked with Mia through downtown Chicago, under the golden holiday lights. Mia whispered, "Mommy, my favorite thing this year is that you're home more. I don't want presents. I just want you." Emily smiled and hugged her tight. Because beyond all the numbers, true success for her was simply this, being fully present in her daughter's life. In the early days of 2023, Emily Tran sat on her kitchen floor, eyes red from crying, staring at a budget spreadsheet and a severance package that was quickly running out. From someone earning $95,000 a year, she had become an unemployed single mom, raising her 6-year-old daughter in the middle of an economic downturn, and a personal one. But just 18 months later, she not only built a marketing business that generated over $700,000 in revenue, she also created jobs for people like her. People who had been overlooked, underestimated, or told their time had passed. She became the leader not just of a company, but of a new way of living, where work, passion, and family could coexist in intentional balance. Emily's success didn't come from luck. It came from one small, courageous decision, not waiting to be saved, but deciding to save herself. She refused to let her past, her failures, or her fears define her future. And whenever she doubted herself, Mia, her daughter, with eyes full of hope, reminded her exactly why she had to keep going. Emily's story isn't just about money, it's about ownership, the belief that even when everything falls apart, you can rebuild from the rubble, stronger, wiser, and more beautiful than before. Just like she turned sleepless nights into business strategy. Just like she turned anxiety for her daughter's future into a company bearing her own name. If you've ever felt like you were falling into the same dark place Emily once did, remember, you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not done. You are just getting started. So, what's next for Emily? Will she hit $1 million next year? Will Elevate her become a leader in the fractional CMO movement across America? Or maybe Emily will help hundreds of other women find their voices in the business world? We'll tell the next chapter in the upcoming video, where you'll see how Emily is preparing to enter 2025 with 7-figure goals, an all-women leadership team, and a heart that always comes home to the sound of Mia's laughter echoing through the halls. Stay tuned for the next video, because it just might be the first chapter of your own journey.